Hello, I am Felipe. I'm a product designer and my specialty is everything related with data and data visualization. And today I want to give you a quick introduction on what it means to designing for data. It is important to mention that it's not about designing with data or designing from data, but more designing for data. And I mean, it's everything that you design for data analysts, for any business person that it wants to analyze the data. So yes, let's take a look. You will notice that at this point everyone is talking about data and what they can do, and we know for sure that with data you can also create AI or machine learning and a lot of things, but what it means to be a designer and working in UX and UI for data. So I always like to start with this example, and this is really important because we can see how important data could be. This is an example from a long time ago, and what it was happening here, it was this plague about cholera, and this guy started to map out where or how many people were dying of this, and he started to realize that there was a pattern in here. And actually when he did some research, he found that there was a fountain, there was like a water source here that was affecting all of these people, and then they realized that where this sickness, this virus was coming from. So they were able to close that water fountain, that water they were able to close it, and then a lot of people were safe. So that's how important is data. We can use it to look at things that we don't know or we didn't expect, so it is really important. So what is data and what is data visualization? So I just want to give you some principles of what is data, how we can use it. So the first thing that I like to mention is that data is not 100% truth. And I always like to make the comparison with photography. When you are taking a photo, when a photographer is taking a photo, of course he's capturing a moment on time with the light and the elements that were there. But we know in this time for sure that there is a lot of things that affect the photo, especially the eye of the photographer, especially the way that he set up the scene. So it's important that we understand that data is a reflection of reality, but it doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate or 100% truth. And actually a lot of people use data visualization to actually lie to people and in communications, in politics. So it's important that we have like a really critical eye when we are like not only working but also consuming any type of data visualization. It is important that we understand that data needs human interpretation, and it's a starter of like bigger discussions. It's a starter to understand and know the truth. This is a little overview of what it means, the process. Usually you will be collecting data from different sources. We talk about sequential data or non-sequential data, SQL or non-SQL, and then after that usually this data needs some preparation. Let's imagine that you have a database from like a lot of students from one country, but in some cases when you have the actual table, you will find that some people use United States and other people just use USA. So a lot of time this data needs some preparation, needs some cleaning, and make sure that everything makes sense. Then we go to the data visualization, and that's where we use a lot of different techniques and different methodologies of visualization to tell something, and then there will be of course an analysis of that, and then storytelling. The usual goals of data visualization is first, put any data in context. Second, explore this data and communicate anything, and of course finding patterns, outliers, and even in some cases predictions. Something that I like to mention also is this important principle, and it's about correlation and causation. In this example, we can of course know that this cat didn't produce that blending of this structure, but there are like some relations. So it's one of the hardest things to prove when doing data visualization is how we can establish or correlation or causation. And in this example, we can see it. We have two lines. The first one is the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool, and then the films that Nicolas Cage appear in. And we can see that even when there is like a clear visual correlation and some like similar things, we can understand as humans that there is not any relationship between these two information. So it is important that we understand that and we are able to like use it the best way possible, right? The other thing that is important is allowing users to control the granularity of data to discover. So in this example, you see the number of incidents reported by month in Toronto. But if you want to go deeper and take a look on not only a monthly view, you can go and see a weekly month, and you can find some patterns. Like usually there will be more incidents in the weekends. And then if you want to go deeper, you can even say something by the hour, and you can find that there will be a pattern of like late in the night, there will be more incidents. So when we allow as UX and UI designers and we give control to the users to kind of like play and like make different settings for the data, they will find more interesting informations. There are in general, two ways of data visualization. The first is something that we call explorative, and it's everything where we are not like giving all of the information to the user. We are just presenting that, and we are not showing our own conclusions. So we can find this especially in everything that is a dashboard, an analytics dashboard, or an operation dashboard. And then we have everything that is explanatory, and that's where the data was already analyzed as these examples, and we can see that there are like already some conclusions. And this is more used in newspaper, in everything that is information design or infographics or anything like that. So I'm going to give you some really practical tips when designing, and let's start with that. So the first one is about pie charts. As designers, we usually use a lot of this, but there is a little problem with this, and is that we as humans, we didn't get the angles as well as we do with proportion. So when you have more than two sets of information, it becomes really hard to kind of like get a quick understanding of the visualization, because we are not that good in angles. And you can see some examples here. You can see the pie chart here, and then the bars. So other things about pie charts, like you always want to start from the 12 o'clock and then go clockwise. So that will be the way to organize the information. And yes, it is good when you have only two values. Spaghetti charts. So I really like this name because this is something that happens a lot, and it's when you are using line charts and you have a lot of them, it starts to become really hard to understand the data, because it is like becomes some spaghetti. It becomes unreadable. So one example or one good practice could be just make some interactions so users can focus only in one at a time, or you can use something like small multiples like you see in the other example to make sure that the information is more clear. Another example related with these line charts, is when you are using smoothed lines against like just straight lines. And the truth is, like when you are using smoothed lines, even when it looks a little better, it could be you could be misrepresenting the data, because you are like showing some values that are not possible. So you can see again this comparison, and you can see that in some months the data is not fully accurate. So you need to be careful with that, and we always want to be more the most like accurate in the way that we represent information. Something that you can always do is rotate your bar charts, and also organize it from the bigger number to the second, like to the less, from top to less. Usually you want to do that when the information is nominal or categorical. This means where the information is not related, it's not sequential. And also you will have more space to like show the full name of the value of the element. And then when you are using something that is ordinal, like time or age or something like that, you want to keep it vertical, so in that way it will be more clear. And again, in this case, you want to organize from the low to the top value in the logical order. Start your axis at 0 almost anyway. In some cases, you want to make sure that the proportion, it makes sense. So for example, this is an example when they are not doing that, and you can see the information is really altered because there is not a lot of difference in here. So this could be used to lie to people, to fake news, you know. And then there are some cases where it could make sense to not start from zero. For example, the average temperature. And the reason why is because the changes are so small but so meaningful, like some little degrees could change the life on Earth. And we can imagine that 0 or like 100, it will be like not possible to have life. So in that case, it makes sense to not start from 0. There is this principle in data visualization that is called it's called data in radio, and this is where we way before, when this newsletter was still a thing, there was like this idea of how you can represent the most using the less amount of ink. In this case, how you can represent the most, like show, like just using less elements. So we can have like some example of like this first visualization when there are like maybe too much elements, and then one other, the final one that is more direct and it's more clear to users. So that is also important. There is like also some principles in the color usage. We always want to test this for accessibility. We want to make sure that we can name colors and we can relate colors with themes. When I'm creating data visualization, or when I'm working in a design system, I always like to create some color palette for these three type of data. The first one, categorical data, that is different from each other, let's say names or colors or something like that. Sequential data, and in here we use color to also showcase that proportion. And then we have divergent data, that is when it could be from something negative to something positive, so we want to have some color palette there. Always remember that interaction and storytelling are your friends. We have some really good examples. We talk about storytelling, we call about simulations, and that always could help to get the idea in a better way. There are some resources that I want to recommend you: Nightingale, Pudding, or these two books that are really good and that I totally recommend. The first one is How Charts Light from Alberto Cairo, and Better Data Visualization from Jonathan Skawich. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but they are really good. I totally fully recommend it. So yeah, that's all. I want to keep going and go deeper in some of these information, so let me know if you like it, and see you.